is Media Week.
Hello, welcome to the program. Ahead, the battle between Nine Entertainment and its lenders ahead of that deadline looming seems to be heating up. We'll be talking about that on the program. Also, the outlook for Fairfax after shares hit fresh record lows. And do record footy final ratings justify the record price for TV rights? But first, to that exodus of advertisers from 2GB following Alan Jones's controversial comments about the Prime Minister. So, why hasn't his apology been enough? And what could this mean for Macquarie Radio and its major rival in the Sydney market, 2UE? Well, we're joined by our co-host James Manning, the editor and publisher of Mediaweek. We also have with us to talk about this and other issues as well, the chairman and CEO of the broadcast regulator, the ACMA, Chris Chapman. And also joining us from Melbourne is Nick Keenan, the head of investment at media agency Mediacom. Just firstly, Chris, if I could start with you. I mean, obviously, these comments weren't made on air; they were made at a function. I mean, is there any role for the regulator in this at all?
No, Bridie, there's not. The comments were made in a non-broadcasting environment. There may be complaints in due course to the ACMA, but those complaints wouldn't have any jurisdiction. And to be honest, it's not appropriate for me to comment on the matter. And I think you'd understand why. We like to concentrate on our relationship between the ACMA and the licensees. They're the ones who have the licence through us, from the government, from the people, from the Australian citizens. And the more we concentrate on talent, the more we'll get distracted from what our main game is, and that's to keep the licensees respectful of the licence they have. So we try and not personalise it. I can't make any comment on that. I have my own personal views, but they're as useful or as important, as influential as yours or James. You know, they're my own personal views. I need to make sure that we just play it straight. The ACMA always plays it straight. So, like all of us, we've noted the comments. You know, the ACMA has, with respect to 2GB and with respect to some Alan Jones commentary, you might recall the Prime Minister and the chaff bag comments recently. One of our recent determinations where we found not a breach against 2GB as a result of that, but we did nonetheless offer a little obiter, if you like, that it was offensive and totally inappropriate. So I think we make our feelings known that way, although we are very fair in the way in which we come to conclusions against the industry's provisions and under their own code.
Yeah, it's interesting, I guess, isn't it, that 2GB haven't really taken any disciplinary action in this. They sort of thought that the apology was good enough, something which not many other people sort of took much notice of.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, looking at this, we also wanted to get the media buyers' view on this, and Nick Keenan joining us from Melbourne from Mediacom. And I just wanted to ask you why. I mean, we've seen virtually all the major advertisers back away from the Alan Jones program. He did come out and make that apology. Why wasn't that enough, do you think? And with what we're seeing, I mean, the media cycle obviously moves pretty quickly here. I mean, what do you think? I mean, will advertisers return to the program?
Look, yes, they will. I mean, you know, no one likes what was said, and I think that, you know, in the short term, you're always going to get this reaction from brands that want to protect their image. No one wants to be aligned, if particularly, you know, your family brand, which makes up the good bulk of advertising, doesn't want to be aligned to that level of controversy because people find it offensive. It's as simple as that. But what happens in the long term, I mean, you know, you go back to Kyle Sandilands in November of 2011, and, you know, I think on this show we were talking about, look, just a different personality and equally controversial statements that actually were made on air. You know, a year later, that particular personality, Kyle, his ratings are up 5%, and I've seen no dip in revenue for Oz Stereo, you know, the network that runs that station. So, you know, short term, yes, they're going to react, they're going to pull a bit of money, they'll stay out of it, and they'll watch and make sure, you know, that he behaves himself and doesn't continue on making statement after statement that's going to offend people, and I would expect the money to come back.
Nick, there was some suggestion here in Sydney in particular that some of Today FM's competitors at the time of what you were talking about then sort of benefited, if you like, from some of the money that was taken out of Today FM. Could that happen with 2GB, or are they too dominant in the market, do you think, for people to stay away for too long?
Look, he's got a big audience. I mean, he is the king of, of talkback radio. There's no doubt about it. But advertisers, when they make a commitment, and we've seen Harvey Norman do it, we've had some clients of our own. Anyone that was basically on air, at that time, we've had to pull the schedule. And yes, the answer to your question is, in the short term, other networks will benefit from the campaigns that get pulled, because ultimately radio was part of the channel mix. So radio is still important to that advertiser. So that money's going to get taken out and put somewhere else. And the first protocol is obviously going to be with a competitor if they can't keep it within the network.
James, I just wanted to ask you, if I could too, because obviously there's been a lot of coverage generated by this story. What's kind of been the impact, I guess, on ratings of the actual coverage?
Yeah, well, it was interesting. There was a little scrap between the Sunday Telegraph and Fairfax, if you like. Sunday Telegraph, of course, broke the story in the newspaper. It comes out early on a Saturday evening. And there's, in Sydney at least, the Sunday Telegraph and the Sun Herald, the New Zealand and Fairfax papers, they actually meet up and swap each other's first editions and to check out what the other's doing. It's a long-standing agreement, but so the Sun Herald, of course, saw what the Sunday Telegraph did, so they wrote up the story. Now, they didn't reference where they got it from, which sort of irked the Sunday Telegraph a little bit, and there was some sort of talk of, look, copyright being broken. I don't think that'll be taken any further. The ABC, of course, has had a field day with this. There's, all sorts of programs across radio, online, television have been all over. Of course, John Laws has made a rather infamous sort of appearance on 7:30 this week. And of course, the Gruen transfer and the hamster wheel both again had a field day with Alan Jones on Wednesday night this week. And the Gruen Planet had its biggest rating since last year. So people are really interested in hearing more about it and having a bit of fun with it too.
Chris, just finally on this issue, I guess, or a side issue, do you get many complaints about broadcasters being fiercely critical of one side of politics or the other? Is that something that the ACMA has to deal a lot with?
Yeah, no, there's a constant stream of complaints, whether it's in the shock jock end of the market or in the public broadcasting environment. These are issues that are very not only topical, but they go to the heart of constructive dialogue and engagement in the country. And I'm always very encouraged that people do take the time to complain, to go through the system, to raise it with the broadcaster in the first instance, and if they're not satisfied with the answer, then to raise it with the ACMA. So there's a constant undercurrent of concern about these sort of issues, and as James was just saying, it's come to a head. This sort of undercurrent of concern in the community. I think there was an outpouring about it as a result of the Jones comments.
Just moving on to another separate issue. I know you've been up since the very, very early hours of the morning. The ACMA involved in a global crackdown on a tech support scam. Just tell us a bit about what's happened as a result of your work with the US FTC.
Well, I hope you're not referring to the dark circles around my eyes,
no,
but I've been up since 1 a.m. We had a very unusual day. We did a joint press conference with the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission in the United States, where they've had a very successful week in prosecutions in a United States District Court. Referencing 6 generic tech support schemes or scams, as you mentioned. The one that's probably the most notorious is the Microsoft imposter scheme. So essentially, you get cold called. Someone says you've got a problem with your computer. We think you've got a virus in it. They encourage you to go on, have a look. Then they confirm to you there is a problem. When there really isn't, they then pass you off to a tech support person. They say it'll cost you X dollars. You give them credit card details. You go and register on a website, and next minute you've discovered that you've committed both mortal sins. You've given away credit card details, and you've given people direct remote access to your computer, which has potentially horrendous complications for you with the pilfering of private information and all sorts of things. So The FTC, with the support of our Canadian counterparts and terrific work that the ACMA staff's been doing over the last 2 years, really helped land that prosecution in a civil action, freezing of assets, closing down of businesses, serving of prohibition orders. It's really disrupted this particular scamming operation, and they are international operations. So that's terrific that we've interrupted their progress. It doesn't mean that they won't reappear somewhere else tomorrow, but you've got to constantly turn them back, and of course consumer and citizen awareness about this is just as important, if not more important.
Yeah, just quickly before we let you go too, there was some of your rulings get a little bit of media space, some get a lot. The Daily Telegraph gave a lot of space to a ruling last week about the Mediawatch program on ABC.
Yes.
They were quite happy that they found in favour, I guess, of the complainant in that case.
Yeah, I sit back and watch that byplay. We just try and play it straight up the middle. There was, some people say there was a certain irony about the ACMA breaching Mediawatch for a breach of their own code of practice. We found that they should have given a right of reply on that particular matter. And I must say, I thought Jonathan Holmes in Mediawatch on Monday night did a very professional job in the way in which he went about the apology.
Chris, it's always great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Chris Chapman, Chairman and CEO of the ACMA. We'll have more too from Nick Keenan from Mediacom coming up on the show. We're just going to take a very quick look now at the media sector's performance on the share market this week. A very busy week. Here's Chris Weston from IG.
Yeah, good afternoon. It's been an absolutely crazy week in the media space this week. I mean, you've got Seven West Media up 7% since last Thursday, Southern Cross Media pulling away from that $1 mark at 104 at the moment, currently up 4% since last Thursday. APN clearly the star of the show. That's been very certainly helped out by some speculation from The Age that they, as part of their New Zealand review, were actually looking, they found a buyer for some of their assets there. The stock traded up as high as 45 cents. It's come back, currently trading at 41 cents. But since last Thursday up about 30%. So clearly that stock absolutely loving that speculation, but it's come back a little bit and getting very dangerously close to the consensus 12-month forecasts or price targets at 48 cents at the moment. So perhaps a little bit lofty, although that speculation will certainly help. Even 10's managed to chalk out a 9% gain over the last 5 days as well. I think that's probably more a byproduct of short sellers covering stock. So obviously people looking to borrow stock, they sell it into the market. They're looking to profit from any down kind of moves, which we know has happened very strongly in 10. But when they feel compelled to buy, to close their position, if they've made enough money or there's some news which makes people change their mind, they have to buy back the stock. It's what we call short covering in the market, and that's pushed the stock up about 9%. So I think the people will look to sell into this stock at better levels and look to profit from there. Fairfax has been very interesting as well. Probably the only stock which has really done pretty poorly over the last 5 days. The broader market's up 1.4%. Fairfax has dropped 7%. We've seen their biggest share, or their second biggest shareholder, Alan Gray, holds about 9%, or the fund manager holds around just over 9% of the stock. Saying that these guys really need to adopt a more shareholder-friendly and value-driven business model, reiterating his view that perhaps they should look to do a strategic a JV of some description there and look to sell assets going forward. With the stock down 7% at the moment, I don't think they will look to sell assets anytime soon. We've heard that from Greg Highwood himself, that he wouldn't be looking to sell assets anytime soon. And clearly the other story, which I think is quite interesting, is what's happened with Alan Jones's comments last weekend. Clearly advertisers haven't been infused too much by the comments, and they've been pulling advertising fees away from that company. So Macquarie Radio, if you actually have a look at the stock, I mean, it's pretty much not even on the market, to be fair. Hasn't actually traded on Tuesday, currently trading around 40 cents or so, but it hasn't actually traded since early September. So the liquidity is extremely thin in this stock at the moment. It might as well not even be a listed stock. I certainly wouldn't be looking to touch this at all. But it's down about 6% since it's last traded. So that negative publicity clearly having an effect on the stock, although, it could be down a lot worse if people were actually in the stock trading it at the moment. But yeah, clearly with interest rates coming down, and they will probably peak, or the market's expecting them to trough at 2.5%, maybe even 2.25%. The question here is that will that help the media space longer term, or are all the issues we're seeing cyclically driven or structurally driven?
Stay with us. Coming up on Media Week, why the outdoor ad sectors continue to see ad revenue rise. And we'll be getting Nick Keenan from Mediacom's views on the outlook for the whole media sector. That's up next.